started having sort of awake visions of how bad it could get. There was a period in early 21 where I couldn't sleep. It was about a 3 to 4 day period. The whole transhumanism agenda, the whole evil AI agenda was presented to me, and I hadn't researched it previously. The use of the shots, the depopulation, the real evil, the really satanic dark stuff that they're doing came to me, and it was very disturbing, but it was a very clear message that it wasn't an absolute future. It was a future that if nobody did anything could occur.
Hello, my dear friends. I'm Donald Lee, and this is Expressing and Revealing Your Truth with Donald Lee. It's a podcast in which I help you understand the truth about who you really are and how you can express and reveal that truth in the world. To do that, I interview people who have had transformational spiritual experiences, the type of experiences that many of us wish we had, but never do. Yet, by learning from my guests' experiences and the wisdom they have gained from those experiences, all of us can glimpse a bigger vision of who we really are and how we can live our lives more fully, more peacefully, more lovingly. Be sure to download my free mini ebook containing 5 of the 50 parables from my popular book, The Band Director's Lessons About Life. These little parables are short, easy to read, inspiring, and also help you understand more about who you really are. There is a link in the show notes below to get your free ebook. In this episode, I interview Tish Conlon. Tish is an amazing and multi-talented woman. She has been an Olympic gymnast, a successful businesswoman, an author and speaker, a podcaster, and the list goes on. But Tish experienced an unusual type of spiritual awakening in 2021. Which neither she nor I understand very well. It might be described as downloads from a higher intelligence or from God. The truth about things going on in the world was revealed to her, and she was given a mission, a way in which she was to help people. I think you will really enjoy this fascinating conversation with Tish Conlon. Here's the interview. Well, hello, and here we are with Tish Conlon. Of course, her full name is Patricia, but she's goes by Tish for quite a long time. So welcome, Tish. Great to have you.
Thanks so much, Donald. Great to see you, and congratulations on this podcast. I always enjoy our conversations.
Oh, I do too. Of course, Tish is referring to the fact that I've been a guest on her podcast numerous times. So
Tish Talk.
It's called Tish Talk. Yeah, Tish Talk. So you have to check out that one too. But here on Expressing and Revealing Your Truth with Donald Lee, we want to hear your story and your story of spiritual awakening. And of course, that is going to need a little bit of a background about, who you are, where you've come from prior to this experience that you had that is, really unusual in terms of the types of experiences that people have for spiritual awakening. So go ahead, Tish. Tell us your story.
Oh, wow. Well, for people who don't know me, I have to go back just the struggle I had with my late husband was so profound and very deeply spiritual. The suffering that he had. We had a car dealership. We had a great life, 2 little babies, and everything going well. And then the financial crisis hit 2007-8, and with huge stress, forced to sell the dealership at a loss. It triggered depression and an autoimmune disease. And so we lived with my husband's disease, my young boys. He progressively became sicker, angrier. He took all the big pharma drugs. His doctor was his cousin. Many of the things he took are now, they say no, shouldn't have been taken. But sadly, he went down the big pharma path, and it cost him his life. And it was enormous suffering. A man who was gifted, brilliant, so the children lost him. I lost him a number of times. He had to go in a coma. So his mood management was absolutely horrible. He was verbally aggressive, and I forgave him as a Christian because he literally was starved of nutrients, and the drugs did so many things. Inside, it was an incredibly beautiful man with a genius IQ. And so, because he was suffering, he listened to me a little bit, but I was called to go back to school. So, I became a holistic nutritionist. And as we know, as Christians in the Bible, in Revelations, it does say plainly, they were all deceived by pharmakia. And I think a lot of the suffering in this world is two factors through the banking, through the usury, through all of that, and through the drugs, through big pharma. So, having witnessed the suffering that our family endured and still my boys, I pledged my life to help people live healthier, happier lives, and it was a deep pledge, was a very spiritual pledge. I had to leave my husband. He was so damaged and violent, but I loved him and I knew he was a good man. So that period of my life installed my mission, which was unbreakable. When COVID hit, and I'd had a successful business and leadership, and I always did workshops, and I encourage people, even to this day, your audience, to have your life mission. What do you want to be remembered for? Because it roots you in right action, moral right action. So because I had endured such deep suffering, I'm not gonna go into it, but very deep with my husband's, tragic circumstances, which we know today could have been easily reversed. Rheumatoid arthritis, very treatable. So I cry, I mourn this man because his life was cut short, didn't need to be. So I made it my mission to help as many people as possible. And when COVID hit, for me already, having really pursued health and I was an athlete, I was a competitive gymnast, went to the Olympics with the Olympic team. That's another story. But I really was dedicated to health. And when COVID hit, um, something in me just screamed right from the beginning. I had found a new partner, had rebuilt my life after my husband passed away, and we were very happy. He was good to the kids, and my business was going well. It was just like God had blessed me with everything. And, I was really deeply in love, and, my kids were doing good. They were doing competitive sports and music, getting the well-rounded children. But when COVID hit, I had such a pit of unease in me that I couldn't shake it. And my business, even though it was very successful, I told my staff, I have another purpose. I don't know what it is yet. So I kind of shut down my business, packaged out my one full-time staff, told everyone else, got rid of my physical building, downsized. And that was, late fall of 2019. So I've always
Yeah.
been
And
deeply
this was,
intuitive.
excuse me, Tish, this was leadership training, right? You were a corporate trainer.
Yeah, I had a talent solutions firm. So I used to do executive search. We did recruiting, for technology recruiting. We do outplacement. We had a whole suite of talent solution services.
Okay.
And a very, very successful business, over 20 years in business, had 10 staff at my height. But I already 2020 summer 2019, I was looking for people to buy my building. I had a small building, and I'm like, I just can't do this. There's something else. And I knew God had something else in mind. And I closed the sale of my business. It was a house that I had purchased on a main street and then rezoned. I sold that November of 2019. It went through. Yeah, and then December, like, all the COVID. So
Divine timing, if there
it
ever was such a thing,
it
right, Tish?
my life has been like that, and, so 2020, we, progressively was concerned. I was so worried as I learned about these shots and my pulsing life mission to help people live healthier, happy lives. I knew it was going against my mission that God had sent me to Earth for and why I'm here, and so I started, like, just I'm not a social wasn't big on social media, but I started going on and going like counter propaganda when everyone said, "Oh, safe and effective." I'm like, "No, no, no." And I listened to some of the big doctor names that were speaking loudly in the beginning. and
Right.
sent it to all my clients. I knew I had to be bold. God had called me to be bold, and I can be. Lost all my clients, warned them about mandates in 2020 already. Lost every single client, and I knew it part of me, I'm like, "Why am I doing this?" But I couldn't help myself. Big posts on LinkedIn was deplatformed. So I went through the whole deplatforming, but the building, urge to help and that something very bad was happening built
Right.
in, by the end of 2020, and my partner and I had both, it was very clear, and I told him we're not taking any shots, so we were aligned that way. But where, things became, um, very deeply spiritual was the end of 2020. I started having, sort of awake visions of how bad it could get, and there was a period in early 21, um, where I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. It was about a 3 to 4 day period. I had the whole flashing, and it was very hard during this time because I hardly slept to determine waking and sleeping. The whole transhumanism agenda, the whole evil AI agenda was presented to me, and I hadn't researched it previously. The use of the shots, the depopulation, the real evil, the really satanic dark stuff that they're doing, came to me, and it was very disturbing, but it was a very clear message that it wasn't an absolute future. It was a future that if nobody did anything could occur. And
Right.
so it was
So when
presented
you
that
say,
way.
Tish, that when you say that this was presented to you, can you describe what that was like?
Well,
You
it
know, we have
Mhm,
this state, that's kind of in between sleeping and waking. It's called the hypnagogic state, right? Where it's that everybody experiences this, particularly in that time when you're waking up. If you
mhm.
wake up naturally, right, and not wake up to an alarm where you're drawn out of a deep sleep. But if you wake up naturally, you kind of come into conscious awareness slowly, and you pass from the sleep state rather slowly into the awake state. And that period in there where you're still dreaming, but you're more consciously aware of your dreams and you can kind of direct your dreams somewhat. And then you get that state there is called the hypnagogic state. And it's the kind of state that I really try to cultivate and have since I became an author, because often ideas and things come to me about my work, my writing, the books and stuff that I'm working on. So when you say things were presented to you, was it kind of in that sort of a hypnagogic state, or can you describe a little bit more accurately or more descriptively
Yeah, I
what
mean,
that was like?
it's it's hard because I've never had a period like that in my life, and a couple of days. So, like, um, what happened as so I don't know if it was like there was, because I was so sleep deprived and I sleep well. But the whole day was filled with, like, sort of visions that were disturbing for, like, a few days, and it was like everything was downloaded, how I already knew about the food and the drugs, but the money and the all, like, a lot of the frauds that I didn't even know about were kind of made aware to me, and I so off and on I would function in the day. I'd have a meal, but there would be all of this kind of, stuff going on, and whenever I would look on social media, something that would be presented to augment it, and it's like it was just all at the same time. As a result, I went over to my partner, in 21, thinking, "Oh, we're all aligned and, we're on the same page." And I said, I felt very deeply called by God to step up in the political realm. And it was so loud. It was like "This is what you need to do," like the loudspeaker. And I'd never been cared about politics, just voted conservative without thinking because I was a small business owner and my parents had voted conservative. Never paid attention to one thing, the odd thing I'd read, but was a pure entrepreneur. So this came out of left field. And so I went to my partner and I was kind of shaking. He sat me down. I spoke for maybe 3 hours, hardly without taking a breath, explaining all of the things that were happening and why God had called me. I must run politically. That's the way to change. That's what God wants me to do. And I thought, well, of course he'll understand. Deep love, all that. Instantly, this was an instant reaction is he looked at me with a new face I'd never seen before because he had struggled with his faith, raised a Baptist but abused in the church. And I think me um, calling this a calling from the Holy Spirit was very disturbing and triggering for him. And so there was an instant shift that I'd never seen before in our relationship. And from that point on, um, the relationship ended instantly. Like he didn't speak to me again. And then he told me to go home. And then he talked to my sister, who was very unawake, and they thought I had maybe gone crazy and discussed putting me in a mental institution, actually. Um, And then, he just told me on Valentine's Day, "We're done." And I did accept it because it was very painful, but it was God's will to remove him. His journey spiritually was going to go in a different path. It wasn't he claimed that I'd probably get murdered or, ruined, and that he wanted to be the gray man, where I have this courageous heart I always have. But I think the truth is that there was a deep spiritual conflict in him. And I think that I feel intuitively God is working on him and has been in the last number of years. But yeah, it's very deep spiritual calling for me. And I think it was a spiritual triggering for him because he had lost his faith. And I feel like it was for the best, but at the time it was very harsh. So within the period of a couple of months, I
Very harsh
lost.
indeed. I mean, this
Mhm.
was probably traumatic for you, really.
Oh, it
You know,
was
having
so
having recently
harsh.
lost your
Yeah.
husband and then thinking that, well, okay, we have, a new relationship, a new start in life, and then have that blow up in your face. These kind of challenges often come when we sort of step onto what we might call the spiritual path or maybe a different spiritual path, go a different direction in our life than what we have been on. That so often what happens is that everybody who was a part of our old life just falls away, either quickly or slowly, but often it's very quickly.
You're right. And what happened is everything that I had built my life foundation of my identity was ripped away from me within the period of 3 or 4 months. So my worldly success, which was a huge part of my identity, is A type, very successful business, used to being a accomplisher, A student, wins all the awards, and all of a sudden my business is gone, totally gone, and I did it because God called me to warn everyone about the mandates. And then my relationship, the love of my life, we were so happy. Like we literally were totally like the happiest couple. Everyone would say, "Oh, you guys are the happiest couple." We're gardening together, we're canning, we're like business, we're both everything. He's a musician, everything was perfect. We traveled, and then that's gone. And then my friends left me because I had warned them about the shot. Some of them I'd known since I was a baby or in public school. And the pain I felt following the Lord's path, I can't describe the level of grief. I've never felt that. I mean, I did grieve my husband, but I lost everything. And so there was enormous grief. And I wanted to share that with people because, yes, I mean, The crying is a wonderful release. When you have a heart that feels and is tender, that's where we find God. So I really deepened my roots with God because I was so upset that He called me on this path and that I lost everything. But I kept going. I ran politically for the only party that was, in Canada that was working hard and talking against the shots and the mandates in 21. So I found my political route. And honestly, I understand very clearly now why God put me on that path because I saved many, many lives. And it's not something I brag about, but in 21, when it was so dark and I was speaking out and going door to doors, was like it was God's work, hugging people, people who were close to suicide because they knew it wasn't right, but they were so scared. So
Yeah.
I really, it was very deep spiritual work in 21. And then I continued on. I did write this book in about inner resilience in 22. And then I used to speak at some of these small freedom groups that were gathering, and getting to know all these people. So I ended up, running 3 times politically. I wasn't elected, but being able to run for a new party, just to express some of the biggest things that meant, like the healthcare, the harm of a lot of these health policies, and then present to councils. I think I presented 10 times. People know me, not just here in this region, but across Canada. And then I just, trying to just be a voice of truth. That's when I started my little podcast, and started, connecting with like-minded. But the pain of loss and the need to follow this path, um, it changed me permanently because seeing how ignorant people are in the biblical sense, how programmed and how brainwashed, it really called me to step into, I guess I would call it the Christ consciousness. So learning to turn the other cheek, with all the attacks and the slanders and the name calling, and also to forgive the betrayals, the deeper ones, has been a journey that has healed and helped me. And
Yeah.
then I was able to also plant little seeds for relationships, like friends that had, fallen off, and just turn them a little bit back towards healing or maybe harmony. Because I think this whole, one of the biggest uh, satanic things is this division. So thinking, oh, that's
Yes.
done. We're different minded. Even within the freedom movement. Oh, I don't believe you. Do you support Israel? Do you just who do you support? I mean, we're there's so many divisions within divisions. So wherever I can, I've been working to heal. Doesn't matter what your politics or that. So that has been actually occurring a little bit in my life. I haven't felt called to date or to remarry yet, but I do believe God has a wonderful man for me. We're built for relationship and I want
Yes.
to, like, I'm not one of these feminists. So yeah, so I feel like if you trust in God, he'll come through. You can't just sit there in your room going like this though. So what I gained is enormous. I lost the worldly me, but I
Yeah.
gained the spiritual me, which is much stronger and healthier. And even my skin, I'm in my 50s, but I have the body and mind of a 20, 30-year-old. I play soccer, I'm fat biking, I'm swimming. And that's because God's always called me to look after the physical vessel, and then when we look after the physical vessel, nutrients as well, it helps our mind, our mood. And when we practice letting go, and this was very hard for me with all my loss, but, lifting out the emotional trauma. And I do love, as you do, Dr. David Hawkins' work. I just ordered 2 more of his books. I'm going on a little vacation. I want to read them. But
This isn't going to be a vacation. It's going to be a spiritual retreat.
well, it's very hard for me like that. I say, "Oh, I've turned into a bee person," but inside is always that go-getter achiever,
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm on the deck. I could read 3 books, work out every day." So, but I mean, that's one of the things God blessed me with, a lot of energy and resilience. And so, and that's where a lot of people who have woken up spiritually either recently or a long time ago, there's that burnout and there's that black pilling where you feel
Yeah.
hopeless and you feel like, and then people start to turn to drugs and alcohol or other things that are harming them. And that's where we have to really deeply dig into faith because God doesn't want us hurting ourselves or others. And, it takes a long time for change. And we see some significant change already for the better. So, I'm on the path. I haven't left. I'm walking the narrow path with God. And I do believe God doesn't go halfway. So I think my future will be political, whether locally, regionally, provincially, or federally. I think I'm got a good brain and for it. My dad was a nuclear power engineer, so I'm a good problem solver. And my mom was also smart and also really kind. And so, between being smart and kind and learning how to get along and also having the strength to push a little bit more to get through or to say no is something I think we need politically. I don't think politics is going to leave the for some time. People say we'll just
Oh
have
no,
all
is
quantum voting, but that might
I was
take a bit. Who knows?
yeah
Maybe sooner than later, but
I was thinking of that one of the famous lines of Jesus and paraphrasing him, politicians are always with us.
yeah, yes. Well, learning how to be like they say, what we need is a philosopher king. And I studied philosophy in school. Lived abroad for a year and studied philosophy. I, speak a number of languages, and I think learning how to do the right thing, the moral compass, that's totally missing.
Yes,
And,
and wisdom.
a
Yeah,
wisdom is missing,
yeah,
so I think you need
and
to
not
be a
just
certain
worldly
age.
wisdom.
Pardon me?
Yeah, not just worldly wisdom, but what we are so much missing, holy wisdom.
Ex I agree, and we need that more and more because that's what God wants to restore our countries, even things like how they took away the Lord's Prayer in schools. There's a long list of things they've been doing to move people along a path, of destroying their faith and leading to an atheist mindset, and that's very much how they controlled people in communist countries by negating God and negating family and faith, and then everything is state controlled, and we never
Yeah,
want that to happen.
and replacing it with an ideology. And
Yes,
these
Marxist.
totalitarian ideologies are absolutely exclusive, and that's why we see, and I've written about this in my books too, as I think you know, um, as we see in many of the movements of today, like cancel culture and all that kind of stuff, this wokeness, is the absolute intolerance of any ideas that conflict with theirs because they require authoritarianism, and totalitarianism requires an absolute adherence to the official ideology. And then one of the great paradoxes of that is the official ideology always changes.
Mhm.
Right? So it's today's official ideology. I mean, if you're still going along with yesterday's official ideology, but it's now changed, you're in trouble. It's fickle. I remember way back in the 1970s, I remember this funny cartoon. It was so perfect that it stuck in my memory all these decades. There's there's three guys in the Gulag, right, in the Soviet Union, in the political prison camps, right? And the one guy looks at the others and he says, "You know, what are you in here for?" And the first guy says, "Oh, I was against Brezhnev. What about you?" And then the other guy says, "I was for Brezhnev." And then the two of them look at the third guy and he shrugs his shoulders and he says, "I'm Brezhnev."
Oh, yeah. That's funny. Yeah. That's a good joke actually, but so true. And, people laugh sometimes when you say communism isn't that, Canada's gone a long way towards that. but the state control, the bloated bureaucracy, the red tape, the deindustrialization which has happened, just making us a mixed society. Consumerism is the god to worship. No real manufacturing in our own country. That's been happening all deliberately, along with this, the education pushing the ideologies of climate and, gender and everything else to worship instead of worshiping God. Well, all while they label whatever they want hate speech. Even the Bible for a while they were trying to ban, although there's been some enough pushback that they've taken that out of the
For
recent
now.
censorship bills. I'm not sure if it's C10 or, there's a bunch of them going down that hopefully won't pass. But, it's all over the world. There's attacks on free speech, which is, freedom. The foundation that we were God given rights is freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And that's
So
all other rights come after that, because if you don't have freedom of speech, everyone's going to be so messed up through propaganda. And we see the effects of it now. We're unwinding. I called myself a deprogrammer. That was my job, even though it was unpaid, but 5 years of pushing up against the narrative. And you could see people twitching, like when I'd say, no, 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 sorry, that's just not true. And they're like, oh, and it's like fire coming out. And they're like, ah, it's like all the demons coming out. I'm like, no, that's not true. Here's the truth. And they're like, ah. But you tell them and you tell them and you tell them and you trigger them. Sometimes if they get angry, that actually you've gotten somewhere, because I've noticed some people who got angry when I said, and I'm very calmly, the truth, they've come around. So you can get in there. But yeah, it's a tough job of deprogramming all the
yeah,
lies and
because
fraud.
the programming is emotion based, right? It's
Yes.
not it's not based on logic and real hard evidence and facts and all the rest of it. It's based on emotion. And so when they're challenged, they don't really have much besides emotion and emotional slogans to fall back on. And if that doesn't convince you or shut you up, they don't really know what to do. Just a little break from the program to mention a couple of things. Firstly, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm to find more people who would enjoy these interviews. Also, if you're interested in spiritual growth, you might be interested in my series of spiritual books. As a spiritual author and a former band director, I use my little the band director trademark in these books because I use music as a metaphor for life and our journey of becoming a musician as a metaphor for our spiritual journey. There are 3 books in these series. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is a book of modern-day parables inspired by events from my teaching career. When you're working with kids, things naturally come up that we sometimes call teachable moments. Little events where you realize that there's a bigger lesson happening right now than the alternate F-sharp fingering on the clarinet that I was trying to teach. I started writing some of these little stories down and turning them into modern-day parables. So, the Band Director's Lessons About Life has 50 little parables. It's a bit like a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Each parable is about 3 pages long. Each begins with a story that happened in school, and then there's a reflection section that draws a spiritual lesson out of the events of the story. That is, it explains what the spiritual metaphor means. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is easy to read, makes a great gift, and expresses many universal spiritual principles in an easy-to-understand way. If you want to go deeper in your spiritual growth, I've also published a study guide to accompany the Book of Parables. It turns the Band Director's Lessons About Life into a year-long course in spiritual development. You will spend a week on each of the 50 parables. There's a deeper teaching about the meaning of each parable, reflection and discussion questions, especially if you would like to use the study guide in a group setting, and a different meditation for each lesson. The third book in the series is a little book titled The Band Director's Pocket Guide to Spiritual Growth. This little book explains a simple 3-step process for putting your spiritual growth into high gear. You can learn more about all these 3 books and my other books at my website, www.cominghomespirit.com. Because, after all of us are on a spiritual journey back home to God. So that's cominghomespirit.com. You can also go directly to my Shopify page at cominghomespirit.myshopify.com, where you can purchase my books directly from me. At the moment, I can only ship paperback books within the continental United States. So if you live in other countries, you will need to purchase my books through Amazon in your own country. If you're enjoying this podcast, I really think you'll enjoy my Band Director series of books as well. Now, back to the program.
No, I mean, and part of the problem is that so many so-called recognized areas were hijacked, like medical journals, totally producing fraudulent studies. So people, you can understand the true ignorance that's biblical, because they're like, no, that's not true. The so and so, the new the medical journal says no, safe and effective. But we have the level of fraud and corruption and pure evil is almost beyond imagining for those who don't
Yeah.
have the spiritual foundation or awareness. And so they just can't imagine that level of lies and fraud and evil. So yeah, no, but I mean, the spiritual path, when you walk it, is full of bliss. I mean, being dealing with my husband, I don't think I ever processed the level of anxiety, sadness, the grief and the emotion, and how painful that was. And so having the space when God took everything else away to focus on my own life and healing, there was a lot of grief that came out from my late husband.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
difficult as he was, I loved him deeply. And, I've got his 2 boys, and, the youngest takes after him. It's a challenge right now. And he's very sensitive, but, very brilliant. But, I wouldn't say he's doing that well. He's doing well on the surface, but in my view, eating crap like his dad did, making bad choices. But for me, I mean, spending this time without all the worldly ego of being a Mrs. Successful was liberating. I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about, we
Oh, it
put
is
too
very
much
much so, and
into
I would
status.
love to. I'd love to follow up with that idea because when you were talking about that, you know, when it it ties in, and you mentioned identity, how you kind of lost your identity as a successful business person, and doing corporate type work and all this kind of stuff, and your husband's business, that all this stuff was lost. And this is a kind of a key part of my work in the last couple of years, and now especially with this podcast, expressing and revealing your truth. Right?
Yes.
It's all about getting to the heart of who we really are, and much of what we think is our identity is not who we are at all. It's not the truth of who we are. And a lot of times, losing these things that we think are our identity, it is a blessing kind of in disguise at first, because you realize, well, that's not really me. And
Mhm.
many of us in the freedom movement have gone through this, having our lives destroyed one way or another, losing everything we had, having to kind of make a huge remember the term pivot from 2020? Yeah, having to
Yeah.
pivot, make a huge change in our lives, do something different. I became an author, right, which is not something I ever anticipated doing. And and we had to kind of shed all of that stuff, kind of like a snake shedding its skin and realizing, well, that old skin, that's not my identity. That's not really who I am. There's something inside me, or maybe we could more accurately say that that my body and all these physical things are inside my consciousness or my soul, and that's who I really am. All these physical things really don't matter. They're not who I am. And so we're able to, forcefully, where there are what we thought was our identity is ripped away like a band-aid being ripped off. And we are able to see with time and with healing, like you say, who we really are underneath all of that.
Well, and it's true. And I mean, I'm gonna say like my life after my husband passed away was like really very happy, fulfilling. I was in really well paid international speaker. I used to go around to conferences as well, bring my partner, my boyfriend, and I was just living it, like, it wasn't like it wasn't a happy life, it was, like, uber happy, it was like, you're with your soulmate, your guard, everything was great, my business, but this calling was despite everything being so good, I was like it's almost like, on the surface, I was self-sabotage, but going through and then even so I know all of who I was before I still am, but what I think God wanted me to address the grief that I had stuffed down with my late husband.
Yeah.
And then when I let go of all that need to be successful, at a certain point, I'm like, well, whatever, because people are so messed up. I'm not going to sacrifice my principles for business anymore. And HR people, human resource people who are my main client base, tend to be more woke, if we use that, than most. And so I just once I started politically speaking out against mutilating children, minors with the trans agenda, which I believe is very evil.
Yeah.
I only speak to minors as an adult. You should have the freedom to do what you want, but everything they did, you could be any gender and all of these medical things are all part of the big pharma evil. When I started to speak out, I really lost that. So where I found the gift from God was taking the time to just like live, just be. So I always had been so rushed that I didn't sort of classically take time to smell the roses. And then going through the deep pain of heartache. So my heart was broken in like a million pieces in 2022, because 21 I was in denial. I was just like fighting and political, but 22 it set in, like, this is it. This is my life's been totally I've just destroyed my life, and so deep grief, and I was able to process that and lift it out, and also it softened me, like meat tenderizer to be kinder and more compassionate and had less, physical financial needs, so I spent more time just like fat biking, trying new things I wouldn't have tried, just and really deeply enjoying my nature was sort of I was craving it. And I've been going along these last few years. I think this year I feel through God there will be some lifting of me back into the working, because I've got too much energy, and I just don't want to be like hanging around anymore. It's like, come on, God, get me in my role. What's next? But yeah, it's been very good for me these last few years,
Yeah.
and I did get to articulate how we can let go of a lot of the pain that we really end up like torturing ourselves with, you know.
Yes.
I did a whole presentation on how, when you're black pilled, like when you start off blue pilled, where you're oblivious to being
Yeah.
enslaved by the government. And then you get red pilled and you're like, oh my God, the government's trying to is enslaving us and trying to kill us. And then you do all the research and then you get like black pilled. They're like, and then you're doing popcorn, junk food, booze, drugs, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's so dark.
Yeah.
What we
And
need
you
to
lose
do, yeah,
you
you
lose
need
hope.
to step into faith and go, oh my God, we're not going there. I'm going down the way. I'm going with God. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to, be kind. I'm going to forgive. I'm not going to hoard. I'm going to, treat my neighbors like, love them like I love
Yeah.
myself. And if we all did that, get out of our selfish needs, and started to live in love and support and honesty, think of the changes in the world that will occur, and it's
Absolutely,
happening.
absolutely. Yeah. And you've written about that. I mean, you've got solutions for black pill in your books, just as I do in my recent books too. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's not an easy path to be awake. I say to people, and there is a lot of loneliness, sort of spirit, like you can feel like there's always God, we have God, but there's as human beings, you feel you always want that, human companionship. And when, particularly in Canada, I don't know where the audience is, but there's so many people that just don't get it at all still, and it's very it can be very discouraging on one level,
yeah,
and also you could feel very lonely because you have to sort of step on eggshells. You don't, one thing you'll say in at any party and you could trigger people, and then nobody wants to talk to you. I had a funny experience. My neighbor had new neighbors come, and they were like, oh, similar age, they both like mountain biking, come on over for a glass of wine. And I'm like, we'll see what happens. Go over, and she's like, "Oh, we're both not working. We don't want to enter the matrix." I'm like, "Oh, maybe they're waking up." And then she's like, "Oh, and all that big pharma stuff." And I think, "Oh." So I said, "Yeah, well, you must not have taken the shot either." Bad. It was like lightning, steam coming out the ears. The woman gets up pacing, angry. What do you mean? They were safe and effective, And then, oh, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to leave, just wanted to say hi. They're like, no, wait, you're wrong. You're wrong. Anyway, so people wake up in different ways too, like a
yeah,
piece here, a piece there,
yeah,
which is fascinating too.
yeah, yeah. Tish, I'm hearing more of your personal journey over the last few years than I've known before. And there are so many similarities between your journey and my journey over the past 5 to 10 years. It's really quite amazing. And I think that may be also a sign that there are millions of people who have experienced many similar things over the last 5 to 10 years of having their lives turned upside down, maybe being canceled, maybe being fired from their jobs, disowned by their families or shunned by their families and friends. It's such a common story today that it's I go back to, I was thinking a few minutes ago when you mentioned, I was thinking of 2021 and the trucker convoy, and millions of Canadians kind of came out from hiding then, and then, oh my God, I'm not the only one that's thinking this way or feeling this way. There's other people too. I'm not crazy. And
Yes,
it
yes,
was a great awakening in not only in Canada but all around the world, of people realizing, oh my God, I'm not crazy. And and yeah, there's other people there's a community of us. And this is
yes.
what my recent books have been about too. And I know that some of your work recently has been about, building community again, because all the forces that are working against us are trying to destroy communities.
Yes, and I loved being a part of the Freedom Convoy in 22 because I'd been so active politically since probably June of 21. So I went and was very boldly doing like events and all over, and so I was attracting larger audiences, and they all were like, some of them would come and hug me and just start bawling like like the people were so disturbed at their core, and they just didn't know where to turn. So that whole process was very deep spiritual. Like, I was aware that I had been called on the right path. That whole deepening of my faith. And then, yeah, the trucker convoy for many people was so spiritual. I mean, it was like, people for were putting aside their differences. I remember talking to one couple from Quebec, and then with another couple from Alberta, and they'd been kind of, positioned to be fighting against each other. And they're like, "Oh, you guys are amazing." We realize it's not the provinces, it's the government.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's beautiful. And as we carry on, I mean, they try through shame. Shame is one of the lowest frequencies. I was shamed in my town. I've been shamed. I've been they attempt, but it's whether you take it in. They tried to shame me. A
Yeah.
total scarlet letter, kicked off, the main community board, because I dared to say maybe we shouldn't inject our children, and and I'm still kicked off a lot of things, still not included, and I still go to events in town where I am, and there's a group of people that look at me like, and so I just walk past them, hold my head high. God's with me. And as I go more and more like that, I attract more and more people. So I want people not to allow shame to enter their life. Let go
Yeah.
of it. If
Yeah.
anyone's trying to
That's
use
right,
that
because
on you, let it
because
go.
then I mean, it's like Dr. David Hawkins says, shame is really a state of consciousness, right? And it's not something a state of consciousness is not something that someone else can force you into,
Yes.
without your approval. It right, shame, you either accept it or don't accept it. And so, we can choose. I mean, people have tried to shame me too. I say, sayonara,
Yeah.
like,
It, it's
there's
tough.
there's
It's
nothing wrong
tough.
with me, and I didn't do anything wrong. So, if
Yeah.
if you want to be if you want to be offended or upset about it, then bye bye. Go be that way on your own because yeah, I don't want to be in your energy.
Yes, it is tough. I think it's been really hard on, the youth,
Oh yes,
and, I
because
was
they don't have the emotional, psychological, and spiritual strength
no,
and
and
resilience.
I wanna put out if people could pray for my youngest son because I'm really worried about him. He came home from, he had been bullied at first year university. He's extremely smart, and had multiple very severe things, and then was moved to a new place, which is quite nice. So he had an apartment style, but he started down a bad path mentally, and eating absolute horrible mood issues, and so that's even though that's why I tell people even though I'm a health coach and I model this good thing, my older son's getting it, but the younger one, it's almost either a rebellious phase or who knows what sort of psychological damage is doing. But he's not thriving, and that's what my book is, Thrive. And so I'm praying for him every day. But I have struggled with that feeling, which is shame, because here I am, a health coach, and I'm trailing, Thrive protocol and do great and overcome anything. And I overcame all this. And my own youngest son, I was down on my hands and knees praying to God, bawling just last week because he barely opens the door. He doesn't go outside. Here I am loving nature. He's been conditioned that the sun is bad. He will not believe me, and eats crap, won't take any supplements, so it's like the polar opposite of me. It's what his dad chose a path like that, and my worst nightmare is that he goes down that same path. And so but what can I do? Like,
Yeah, I will
let it
definitely pray.
go. I have to pray
It's
because and pray for
it's
mentorship for him. And then this isn't just my I say that because I want to reveal that to the audience because we all hold these private shames. And so I have been holding this the whole time my son was home. I've been feeling secretly like ashamed because what did I do? Like I missed something that he's
yeah,
so unhealthy. And so I can only pray and keep telling them. But this is a lot of people have these situations that are very unhealthy that they're dealing with, and I don't want you to feel like that it's your load and will just like be that ball that pulls you down. You have to let go of it. Even with my son, who I love more than anything, he has, you have to let go. I've told him a million times, there's only so much I can. He's 18 now. He's going to need to find the healthier path himself.
yeah, they do. That's the very difficult thing for all of us parents is to let go of our children, particularly when they're struggling and we can see that they're struggling. But yeah, somewhere around the time their hormones kick in, the parental influence kind of kicks out for most of us. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
I have the similar thing with my own children. and they're on their own path. They have to live their own lives, and if they don't want to accept our guidance as parents, then so be it.
Well,
But that's so hard. It's easier for a father to have that attitude than a mother. I
it's
get that too.
yeah. Well, I say our the weapons in this war, and you've said this, I mean, love, forgiveness, and truth,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And so in every circumstance, no matter how bad it might appear, if you the resentment and the anger, they don't work. So love your kids through the bad phases, believe in them, tell them you believe in them, encourage the positive, even in your words, and model and tell them the truth. Like, I'm not going to lie, like, hey, you're doing great. It's like, hey, you're eating like shit, this is awful.
yeah.
So in all
You're slowly killing
circumstances.
yourself, and it hurts me to watch it. Yeah,
Yeah, but, so we all have things that we're doing, but if you wake up grateful, if you ground yourself in healthier habits, I always do calisthenics now in the morning, and, I kinda tune myself, set my intentions, do a prayer every morning and every evening, and, just try to be useful in any way, in a positive way in the world, however small that would be. Some people feel like, oh, who am I? Well, even to go on Facebook, for example, and like some people's posts, that's a way of giving love. Don't worry about how many likes you get. I turned off all my notifications. I'm not, super popular and popular. I don't care. But just go around, share the love, the healing, encourage where there's been division, encourage connection. I've had a few cousins and that they hadn't been speaking in like decades, and I was able to work through and get them to reconnect, and that's been a great healing that my cousins have been so grateful for. Just forgiveness. So
yeah.
things like that are so powerful. How we can lift people out of these states, lower level states, through our love and our forgiveness.
Right on. So beautifully said, Tish. And as I've written and frequently said, all healing comes through forgiveness, and we don't hear that enough. So that's
I
beautiful.
agree.
Thank you so much for coming on, Tish. Do you want to just share again with the audience, because you're the author of 2 published books, right? The Thrive Protocol and your earlier one on nutrition, right?
Yes, so my first book, they're both on Amazon, is The ABCs of Food, Boost Your Energy, Confidence, and Success with the Power of Nutrition. This really talks about the food industry, gives like an encyclopedia of how you can use specific nutrients, like ABCs, of every single food classification, lots of recipes and stories. The second one is more for spiritually awakened people. It covers physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience. It talks about the financial, the frauds, gives detailed ideas on detox, how you can detox all the parasites and heavy metals. So it really goes in depth. I think this is a great book to buy if someone is they want to, for themselves, or someone who's waking up. And and I do work with different groups. I do workshops on thriving, emotional resilience, a lot of letting go. The protocol is really stands for tenacity, stepping into courage. How God in the Bible, more than anything else, He tells us not to be afraid. So fear is one of the greatest evils out there, is when we paralyze ourselves with fear. So take a chance, and then healthy upgrades, responsibility, imagination, vision, and faith, and emotions and energy. So I cover detailed in each one, and go through how we can really overcome anything when we manage those things. So, but that's it. It's Tish Talk is my podcast. My website, if you want to reach me, is tishconlin.com. And I do workshops. I do public speaking internationally. I used to. I was just about to say that, but God's called me to be true. I'm trying to get that back. I'll be even more wise once I do it. So that's my goal and hope for this year, as I get back on the public speaking whatever bandwagon.
Yeah, perfect. Right on. Super. I'll put some links in the show notes, and people can contact you and check out your books and all that kind of stuff.
Thanks so much,
Thank you so
Don.
much.
Best of luck. I always, I love your books myself, and always enjoyed our conversations. So, wishing you all the best with this, and hopefully, we'll see you in the summer next time you're through Ontario. Take care.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm here in Florida for the winter. I'm escaping the Canadian winter, and but the United States government wants me out of the country before the end of April. So
Oh,
the shortest route to Canada is straight north. So I might
oh,
be coming back to Ontario in April.
oh.
I don't know. I haven't planned that far ahead yet.
Oh, well, if you do, we'll do a big event. I've been doing events for authors, and they're very well attended. So maybe we'll talk
Well,
about that
great.
separately. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, keep me in mind and think about April. Okay, awesome.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Take
much.
care.
God bless
Bye
you.
now.
All the best, Tish.
You too. God bless.